You wake up, but you do not rise. There is no sharp intake of breath, no sudden clarity that announces a new day. There is simply the mechanical transition from unconsciousness to function the way a power grid flickers back on after a brownout, not restored, merely operational. You stare at the ceiling, not with dread, not with hope, with something far more insidious than either. A profound weighted neutrality, the emotional equivalent of a blank page that has forgotten it was ever meant to be written on. Your body knows the sequence before your mind has even consented to be awake. The feet find the floor. The water boils. The clothes are selected, not chosen, selected by a subroutine that requires no conscious input. You are efficient. You are precise. You execute the morning like a contractor building someone else's house. And somewhere in the motion you notice that you are not actually there. Swells slightly, then retreats. This is not depression. Depression announces itself. Depression has a weight you can name and carry visibly. What you are experiencing is quieter and therefore more dangerous. It is the hum of a refrigerator in an empty room, a constant, low-frequency vibration of maintenance. A frequency so familiar you stopped hearing it years ago. You answer the emails. You navigate the traffic. You sustain the conversations, laughing at the right moments, nodding at the appropriate intervals, producing the correct facial expressions for each social contract. From a distance you look fully alive. But if someone placed their hand against your chest and listened carefully, they might hear the sound of an engine running without a driver. This is not sadness. Sadness is an active state. It requires energy to mourn, to feel the specific gravity of loss. What you carry is different. It is the cessation of reaching, the quiet retirement of wanting. You have stopped looking at things. You have started scanning them. You scan faces for deviation, schedules for conflict, rooms for exits. Your eyes do not rest, they verify. They are sentinels, not explorers. A long pause. The breathes. In the quiet moments waiting for a light to change, for the coffee to brew, for the meeting to begin, a specific physical sensation rises in the center of the chest. It is not pain, it is a tightness, a chronic anticipatory bracing, as if you have been holding your breath underwater waiting to surface, and you have waited so long that you have forgotten you are the one keeping your own head submerged. The body is perpetually tensed, chemically primed for an impact that never fully arrives. Your nervous system is locked in suspension, a high-alert stillness where the calendar pages turn and the seasons shift and the years accumulate. Yet some interior part of you remains frozen in a single vigilant moment. You are safe, objectively, measurably, verifiably safe. So why does every cell in your body act as though survival is still the primary task? Shifts slightly warmer but still searching from the outside. What you carry is almost aggressively invisible. In fact, in a culture that has built entire industries around the performance of productivity and the aesthetics of stoicism, your state is frequently mistaken for the ideal. You are the person others describe as grounded, unflappable, a steady hand. When the temperature of a room spikes, a sudden crisis, a family emergency, a financial shock, you do not oscillate, you do not spiral, you simply act. You become a conduit for solution, bypassing emotion entirely to execute the necessary logistics with surgical calm. And the world looks at your lack of visible tremor and calls it strength. They mistake your flatline for stability, because you do not weep in public, because you do not lash out, because you absorb the room's chaos and process it into function. The assumption forms quickly and solidly that you are simply built differently, that you possess some superior capacity for regulation. The labels attach themselves. The anchor, the rock, the one who always keeps it together. These are offered as high compliments. They are intended as appreciation. But to you they feel like heavy claustrophobic blankets. Because they are not compliments for your soul. They are accolades for your armor. Deepens. People bring you their chaos instinctively. They sense the surplus of order you project and they pour their anxiety into your container. Because yours appears infinite. They do not know, they cannot see that the container is not infinite. It is hermetically sealed. When you mention, in a rare moment of transparency, that you feel exhausted, they nod. We're all tired, they say. And in that normalization, your experience dissolves into the background noise of modern life. They validate the performance. They reward the mask. And your nervous system records a lesson it never asked to learn. Connection is conditional on your invulnerability. Every time you are praised for holding it together, the internal system tightens its instruction. Every standing ovation for your composure is another brick in a wall you did not consciously choose to build. You are performing, living so convincingly that no one suspects you are merely managing a prolonged evacuation. And the praise does not comfort you, it isolates you. It widens the terrifying gap between the accolades you receive and the invisible tax you pay just to maintain neutral. A breath. The holds. The erosion is not dramatic. It never arrives in a single catastrophic moment. It is geological, imperceptible. It happens in the slow grinding down of your capacity to feel anything other than the brief relief of a completed task. You begin to notice that your interior landscape is flattening, a monoculture of efficiency, where the only peaks are anxiety and the only valleys are exhaustion. The vibrant, chaotic spectrum of human emotion, spontaneous joy, creative longing, deep sorrow, wonder, desire is being slowly compressed into a narrow band of manageable gray. You are not crashing. You are dimming, and the dimming is extraordinarily expensive, because to maintain a calm exterior while your interior is braced for impact requires a continuous high-voltage expenditure of energy. You are driving with the emergency brake fully engaged. You reach your destinations. You complete the journey. But the friction is burning out the engine in ways that don't show up on any dashboard until the damage is already irreversible. This is why you feel a bone-deep weariness that sleep never fully resolves, because you are not sleeping. You were merely offline. Your nervous system remained on guard duty through the night, scanning the silence, keeping the muscles slightly contracted, ensuring that even in unconsciousness, you were prepared to mobilize at a moment's notice. You wake up tired because the rest was not restoration. It was maintenance. Swells gently, then quiets to near silence. Over time, this vigilance creates a profound deficit. You begin to treat your energy like a rationing economy during wartime. Social interactions are silently calculated by their cost. Do I have the reserves for this conversation, for this gathering, for this person who needs something from me? Hobbies are abandoned not because you no longer love them, but because they require an initial spark of output that you simply cannot authorize. The nervous system has classified them as non-essential expenditure. You retreat into smaller and smaller territories of safety, predictable routines, passive entertainment that asks nothing of you emotionally. You are not resting in these moments. You are rationing, stripping the house of its furniture to keep a single fire burning. And then comes the cruelest part. You try to force leisure. You tell yourself you deserve rest, so you sit on a beach or you start a film, and instead of relief, you feel a restless, itching wrongness, like loitering in a waiting room for an appointment that never arrives. This is not a character flaw. It is neurobiology. Relaxation requires a signal of safety that your body has learned, at a very deep level, not to fully receive. A long instrumental passage, low cello, distant piano. To understand why this happens, why the signal to stand down never comes, we have to dismantle a very popular and very wrong understanding of the nervous system. Most people imagine the nervous system as a simple switch. You are either stressed activated or relaxed deactivated. The assumption is that if you are not running invisible panic, you must be at peace. But neurobiology reveals a third state, a state far more deceptive than either stress or calm. Imagine a car. The fight-or-flight response is slamming the accelerator, adrenaline flooding the system, the body mobilizing to sprint or to fight. The rest and digest state is releasing the pedal entirely and coasting social. Engagement, healing, the full breath. What you are experiencing is the specific mechanical act of pressing the accelerator and the emergency brake simultaneously. Your sympathetic nervous system is revving, pumping cortisol into the blood, scanning for threats, demanding execution. But a deeper, older circuit, the one responsible for freeze and immobilization, is clamping down hard, numbing the sensation of that revving engine, creating the appearance of stillness while the internal combustion is continuous and total. You appear still, you appear functional, but underneath the hood, the engine is screaming. This explains the paradoxical fatigue. You burn enormous metabolic resources to remain static. This explains the numbness. Your biology has deployed a chemical dampener to shield you from the full intensity of your own stress response. And this mechanism is not a mistake. It is not a malfunction. It is one of the most brilliant evolutionary adaptations the human organism has ever produced. It is designed for environments where fighting is impossible and fleeing is futile, where the only viable strategy is to endure, to be useful, to feel nothing, and to survive. Somewhere in your history, perhaps a volatile or unpredictable childhood, a period of prolonged helplessness, a season of life where your safety or belonging felt perpetually conditional, your brain cataloged an experience. It learned that being visibly alive, visibly needy, visibly vulnerable was dangerous. But collapsing entirely was not an option either. So it found the middle path, the automation, the survivor. It wired this pathway because it worked. It got you through. And the brain, being a machine of extraordinary fidelity, honors that success. The neurological tragedy is that the brain does not see your current reality. It predicts the recurrence of the past. It is not a camera capturing the present moment. It is a prediction engine running the most successful model it has ever built, and that model was built in conditions that no longer exist. The predator has left the room. The conditions have changed, but the system has not received the update. Shifts something warmer begins to emerge beneath the drone. You have likely built a narrative around all of this. A story you tell yourself, in the privacy of your own mind, to explain the gap you feel between yourself and the rest of the living world. You call yourself lazy. You decide that you simply lack the spark, the ambition, the internal fire that others seem to carry so effortlessly. You look at your inability to begin things, your retreat from joy, your difficulty sustaining deep connection, and you conclude that something fundamental is missing from your construction, that you are hollow, that you are performing fullness in an empty room. This is a category error of the most costly kind. What you interpret as laziness is the biological weight of a brake pedal that has been engaged for so long, the muscles no longer remember releasing it. What you call coldness is insulation, a perimeter carefully constructed to keep inputs manageable. What you label boring or passionless is a nervous system that has been so exquisitely specialized for a hazardous environment that it has lost the vocabulary of ordinary, unguarded living. You are not your armor. You have simply been wearing it for so long that the skin beneath it has forgotten what air feels like. You have mistaken the shield for the soldier holding it. You have confused the strategy for the self. Rises slightly searching, unresolved. Watch how this pattern colonizes every dimension of your life. In relationships, you are the partner described as low drama, reliable, consistent. You demonstrate love through maintenance, through acts of service, through logistical care, through showing up when things are difficult and keeping the infrastructure functional. But look closely at the nature of your intimacy. You are present for pain. Pain is a problem to be solved, and your system is calibrated for crisis management. But you are often absent for joy, because joy is unstructured. Joy requires you to release the grip and let the nervous system move freely. And that signal, let go, is precisely the signal that your internal architecture refuses to process. You stand at the edge of a room where people are laughing, feeling the faint pressure of an invisible pane of glass between you and the experience. You feel a loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone. You feel it in a crowd. You feel it in a conversation. You feel it in the arms of someone who loves you, because the only part of you that can truly connect your vulnerability is the one part that has been locked in protective custody. In work, you are drawn, almost magnetically, to crisis. You complain about the chaos, the deadlines, the fires, the impossible timelines. Yet notice what happens when the chaos resolves. When the project closes, when the inbox empties, when the lull arrives, you do not relax. You become agitated. A drop in external pressure produces an inexplicable internal flatness, and almost immediately, your mind begins manufacturing new urgency, obsessing over minor errors, anticipating the next emergency, finding problems in solved situations. This is not ambition. This is dependence. You need the external pressure loud enough to override your internal inhibition. When the world is falling apart, the brake releases, you are finally permitted to move. In the crisis, you feel most alive, most yourself. And in the silence, you feel most like a machine that has been unplugged. In creativity, how many projects have you begun and abandoned? How many times have you purchased the materials, cleared the schedule, made the promise to yourself, only to sit down and feel the power simply cut? A sudden fog, a wave of inexplicable fatigue, the sharp, dismissive thought, this is pointless, and you name it: procrastination, lack of discipline, absence of talent. But look at the mechanism. Creativity is, by definition, a non-essential expenditure of energy. It is playful. It is vulnerable. It is uncertain. To a nervous system calibrated purely for survival, the act of making something for its own sake, something with no guaranteed return, no crisis to resolve, is classified as a waste of rationed resources. The circuit breaker trips, the current cuts, and you sit in the silence wondering what is wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. You are fighting a biological breaker, not a character flaw. And in your relationship with time, you likely excel in the immediate. You can survive the day. You can navigate the week. But ask yourself where you want to be in 5 years, and the mind goes strangely, almost frightening blank, not vague blank, like trying to see through dense fog. You cannot visualize a future version of yourself, not because you lack imagination, but because your nervous system does not traffic in futures. It traffics in the immediate perimeter. An animal in freeze does not plan for the next season. It waits for the predator to leave. You have lost the capacity to dream, not permanently, not irreversibly, but functionally, because the system that runs you keeps you locked in a perpetual vigilant now. The holds a long suspended note, The pattern is total. It is not just how you feel, it is how you function across every dimension in love, in work, in creation, in time. A universal strategy of withholding life in order to ensure survival. And survival is the one data point your brain uses to justify the entire operation. It worked, the system reminds itself. Look, you are still here. But survival is not a static achievement. It is an ongoing transaction, and the currency being spent is not renewable. Every day inside this functional freeze, you pay a biological tax. You purchase safety with vitality. The body, treated for years as a utility vehicle, begins to exhibit the specific wear of machinery run without maintenance. The chronic bracing sediments into the fascia, into the muscles and the connective tissue and surfaces as the tension headache that resists medication, the digestive irregularity that defies explanation, the autoimmune fluctuation that no diagnosis can fully account for. These are not random malfunctions, they are invoices. They are the body presenting the bill for a wartime economy running through decades of peacetime. But the somatic cost is secondary to the existential one. You cannot selectively numb. The biological mechanism that dampens fear and grief also dampens joy and wonder, and the electric recognition of beauty. You have become so efficient at filtering out the noise that you have inadvertently filtered out the Tao. You move through the texture of your life, through your achievements, your relationships, your milestones wearing thick woolen gloves. You can touch the shape of things, but you cannot feel them. You are safe from the jagged edges of heartbreak, but you are equally safe from the piercing clarity of deep connection. You have built a fortress to protect what is most essential in you. The walls are high, thick, impregnable, and what you are protecting is perfectly secure inside. But the walls are now so thick that no light reaches the interior. The treasure is safe. It is sitting in the dark, gathering dust. Shifts something almost tender, fragile, beginning to resolve. You are not living. You are hoarding time, accumulating days without spending them, collecting years in a sealed room and calling it safety. The danger is no longer the original threat, the predator that initiated this response, the volatile environment, the conditional love, the helplessness that had no exit. That predator is gone. The conditions have changed. The room is different now. The danger, the real danger, is the strategy itself. The danger is looking at a calendar and realizing that years have passed in a reliable, featureless gray. That you have been so successful at ensuring you would not be hurt that you ensured, simultaneously, that you would not be touched. The bill for that safety is arriving now. And the cost is not pain. The cost is the unlived life, the relationships that received your function but never yourself, the creative work that exists only as an intention, the experiences that registered as survived rather than felt, the future you couldn't visualize because the nervous system refused to look. The question is not whether you can sustain this. You can. That much is proven. The question, the one that has been sitting in your chest since before you had words for it, is this: how much of your remaining time are you willing to spend buying a safety you no longer need? A long pause. Breathe slowly. There is no dramatic revelation waiting at the end of this. No cinematic thaw. No single moment where the ice breaks and the self rushes out whole and healed and singing. That is a story. This is a nervous system. And nervous systems change slowly, carefully, on their own terms. You will likely wake up tomorrow with the same familiar heaviness. The hand will reach for the coffee. The eyes will scan the room. The sequence will begin without your permission. The armor does not dissolve simply because you have finally seen it, but something has shifted in the architecture, something quiet and fundamental. The silence is no longer empty. It is populated now by a witness. You are watching the machine work. You can see the brake pedal. You can feel the tightness in the chest, not as who you are, but as something you are doing, a posture, a holding pattern, a strategy that outlived the problem it was built to solve. This micro-separation is not nothing. It is the only beginning that ever matters. It is the hairline fracture in the monolith, the difference between being the prison and being the prisoner who has just for the first time noticed a loose brick in the wall. Becomes warmer, the first real warmth in the entire piece. You do not need to smash the walls. Catastrophic dismantling would only trigger the guards, send the internal system scrambling to reinforce what was breached, tightening what was loosened, rebuilding in the night what you tore down in the day. The task is smaller, and for that reason it is more terrifying. The task is to notice the moments of actual verifiable safety, the quiet morning before anyone else is awake, the room of a person who has never asked you to perform, the breath that comes unexpectedly, the one that goes all the way down to the diaphragm rather than stopping at the collarbone. And in those moments, without force, without demand, to let the foot ease off the brake by a single millimeter, not to sprint. not to transform, just to feel the terrifying small sensation of speed, to let the air reach the skin but has been under the armor. To risk for one unguarded moment the intake of a breath that does not brace for the next impact. The predator is gone. The siege has ended. The cage door has been unlocked not recently, but some time ago, while you were managing the logistics, keeping the system running, sustaining the performance. You have been sitting in the open cage, and the muscles in your legs have forgotten what they are for, but they are there. They have been there all along, waiting beneath the years of stillness, patient in the way that only the body can be patient, outlasting every reason you invented for staying. The rise is not triumphant but alive, genuinely, quietly alive. The question is no longer whether you are capable of leaving. The question is something older and more frightening than capability. If you finally release the brake, if you let yourself feel the true scale of everything you have been holding back, the love that was never permitted to move freely, the grief that was never allowed its full weight, the joy that was always intercepted at the gate, if you let all of that rush in at once, with the force of everything that has been compressed and waiting, what will you do with the terrifying amount of life that is ready to come through? That is not a rhetorical question. That is the only question that has ever mattered, and it is waiting for you in the silence on the other side of the armor. Holds, long, breathing, slowly fades to silence.